Hello, today I'm going to explain about the movement of substances in our bodies. So it's more like a biology class, and let's dive straight in. So, not this type of movement is not only limited to our body, so it is diffusion. So I will be explaining it with a little example outside of our bodies to make it more clear. So let's say, for example, you are in a room and you sprayed perfume on the far right corner. After a few minutes, what are you going to notice is that if you went to the far left corner, you're gonna smell that perfume. How? Imagine, let's say this is the room. You sprayed the perfume here. Let me represent the perfume particles as these dots. Spread the perfume here. After some time, because of the particles movement and because they were bumping into each other and bumping into the walls, what are gonna happen is that they're gonna spread out until they're evenly distributed in the room. So in all, until you smell the perfume in all corners of the room. So I hope this is a clear example of what diffusion is. It is a movement of substances, molecules, atoms from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration. And this type of diffusion, this type of movement, it's passive, is that it doesn't need any energy. So we said that diffusion is passive, it doesn't require any energy. It's just by the movement of it occurs by the movement of the particles itself. So let's connect it to our bodies. For example, let's say some glucose molecules are moving from one, like let's say it's moving from one region to another region. So our bodies are not going to be spending any energy or ATP to move these glucose molecules. They're just going to change and move until I have the same concentration of glucose all around that region. So this is the first type of movement, which is diffusion. There are other types of movements when diffusion is not applicable. So as I told you, let's connect it to our biology class. One of the most important components of a cell is the cell surface membrane, aka the gate. It is the line. It controls which substances will enter the cell and which will get out. So it's kind of like gate and the security guard standing near the gate. In eukaryotic cells and in prokaryotic cells, a cell surface membrane is present. Now, when we're talking about the gate, it's very important that we understand its structure. A cell surface membrane is made up of a layer of phospholipid. A phospholipid is basically a molecule that has a phosphate head, glycerol, and two fatty acid tails. Okay? Another term that we have to introduce at this point is hydro, which means water. We're going to have hydrophilic and hydrophobic. I guess from the word phobia you can see where phobic is coming from. Anything that is hydrophobic, it means it doesn't like water. Hydrophilic loves water. So you see those little red circles, and you see where they're stationed. Extracellular, it's basically the thing outside the cell. So let's say it's a blood vessel, an artery, okay? And in the artery you have what? You have blood, which is made up of water, right? So these little red dots, they represent the phosphate head, which is hydrophilic. And you see these two yellow lines, they represent the hydrophobic fatty acid cells. They don't like water, that's why they're kinda going inside. Here in this layer there is no water. In this layer it is there is no water atmospheric, okay, in this atmosphere or in this environment. But on the intercellular and extracellular, they're facing, the phosphate head must face, because these environments are hydrophilic. Okay, so why did I include this information? I included it so we understand that sometimes, let's say if a molecule, the hydrophobic part, it, it doesn't allow any polar molecule to enter. Polar substances are like water, a charged sodium ion, like sodium Na plus, a chloride ion, Cl minus. So anything that is charged plus water, these are all polar substances. And we said that the hydrophobic region, it will not allow the polar substances to pass through. So how are they going to enter? These things are needed by the cell, but the cell surface membrane, its structure doesn't allow for those things to enter. So how are they going to enter? And this is where we introduce our next moving mechanism. It is the same one that we discussed now, diffusion, but this time it is facilitated diffusion. In simple English, something facilitated is that it's eased. Okay, so it's like diffusion that is helped. And this diffusion is helped to be carried out by something called carrier proteins. Sorry, the picture is a bit blurry, but it's those blue structures. Okay, they're embedded in the phospholipid bilayer. So if you can see the red dots and the red dots, this is the layer that we just discussed here up. So these carrier proteins are embedded in the phospholipid bilayer, and they're specific to the type of substance that it will carry. For example, this carrier protein is for sodium, this one is, let's say, chlorine, this one is for another substance. So each one is specific, and they will allow the substance to move from a region of higher concentration, which is this side. This, you see, we have so many of the green dots. So from a region of higher concentration, let's say this guy, he will move in through here, down its concentration gradient, and it will come to the other side. And it will continue to repeat with the other thing. Let's say it's going through this carrier protein. It will continue until they reach an equilibrium. Equilibrium means equal. So when they're equal in concentration on both sides, then facilitated diffusion will stop. So this is for polar substances if they want to cross into the cell or out of the cell. So far we discussed if a substance wants to move from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration. But sometimes the cell might need more, even if it has enough. Let's say it has a higher concentration than the outside. It may still need more. Let's say glucose. If we are running, your cell needs more. Okay, but the mechanism of diffusion doesn't work like that. It works with the concentration gradients. It works from high to low. However, your cell, it already had glucose, but it still needs more. So how is the glucose from the blood going to cross into your cell? Like this, the glucose is going from a region of lower concentration to a region of higher concentration. And diffusion simply cannot allow that. So we have a type of transport called active transport. We call it active because we use energy. Okay, always try to link it like this. When you're active, like running or doing some sort of activity, you're using energy. Okay, so it is a movement of substances from a region of lower concentration. Opposite of diffusion, okay? To a region of higher concentration. Diffusion, we're going with the concentration gradient. Here I'm going against the concentration gradient. And to do that, the cell must use energy. It must use ATP. Okay? Active transport also requires proteins embedded on the cell surface membrane to work. And it is the same thing. They have proteins, they have to be either specific to a certain substance, and we will use ATP to move the substance from the region of higher concentration to the region of lower concentration. Another example for active transport is, for example, let's say the roots of plants. Okay, for example, in the soil, let's take phosphorus, for example. If it's the roots in higher concentration but the plant still needs it, so the plant just stop? Will the plant just stop absorbing phosphorus just because it has a higher concentration of it in its roots rather than the soil? No. If the plant needs it, it's gonna use active transport to move the phosphorus sub molecules from the soil where it is in lower concentration to the roots where it is in higher concentration. So these are the three main types of movement of substances in the body. However, they are not the only transport mechanism that our body uses it. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment, and best of luck in your journey of understanding your body.